of Omaha, that picture, that was a classic. I was at the Democratic Party convention after the elections last year, and I got a picture with the former mayor, and we're best friends now.
Speaking of pictures too, again, man, you got to get some better pictures. It looked like that was like from 40 feet away. You were half a football field away from this guy, and someone
Well,
took a picture.
I had to prove how much bigger I was than that man.
All you got to do is stand next to him, man. People, your shoulders are still level out. You know what I mean?
That's true.
That's all right, Bob. That's all right. But yeah, okay. So what we're gonna do here? Let's cruise into, since we were kind of talking baseball. Let's kind of stay on that same note and kind of go over some of the projections here that Pacoda came up with. And now Pacoda, basically the way this works is they add up all the wars, which is wins above replacement. They kind of add up the stuff on the roster. They punch a bunch of these numbers into some kind of baseball robot, and they basically come out with a projected win total for these teams. And so starting off, we'll just go down the line as they did. But starting off, they got the Boston Red Sox is basically who they figure, right now, 86 wins, 76 losses. And this is what I'm going to do here, Bob. I'm going to run through these teams one by one, and then we'll kind of see if any of these teams kind of scare you a little bit. So coming out of the AL East, Boston Red Sox, 86 wins, tied with them. Tell me if this is a shocker now. We got Tampa Bay Rays with 86 wins. Then they have the Toronto Blue Jays with 82, the Yankees with 80, and the Baltimore Orioles with 78.
Looking at the with the Red Sox, 86 win. I mean, what did they exactly do this offseason?
Only gigantic moves in the world. They got Ramirez. They convinced him to play the outfield.
Yeah, and Pablo Sandoval. I mean, are those guys that are really gonna propel them? I don't really buy those two moves as being, making them so much better than they were last year. I mean, last year they were bad. I don't know. I just don't see the Red Sox winning this division.
Oh,
and also the Rays, with the way the Rays did things, they lost their Andrew Friedman, they lost Joe Madden. Those are two big losses. 86 wins. Zobrist is gone. Escobar's gone. I don't know. I feel like these projections are a tad off here. 86 wins seems like highballing for the Rays.
Well, think about it. I mean, right now, you're talking. Oh, highballing the Rays big time, but especially when you think about the Red Sox, you take into consideration. How often hurt Pablo Sandoval's been because he's been out of shape, and how hurt Hanley Ramirez is. And even though Hanley does play through a ton of injuries, I'll give him that. But there's a lot of times where he can't avoid, where he does need to be shelved for a little bit. And so I'm not super convinced. I'm not necessarily completely convinced on on their starting rotation. Adding Rick Porcello and Joe Kelly last year, that was a big deal. Porcello obviously this year, but no, they do have enough names there. We'll see if it all pans out. And then, thinking about Tampa, I mean, I'm incredibly excited to have Joe Madden in town. I mean, this guy is a riot. Some of the things that he's done in the past with Tampa, and just everything that he brings to the table as a manager, and it's kind of a big deal, being able to communicate with your players because. Sure, these guys are getting paid tons of money, but, when it's a job. So, that's why fans are going to be upset and say, oh, well, it's a job. You're getting paid tons of money. You should be pissed. No, you shouldn't. It's a work environment. You want to be comfortable. People are going to perform their best when they're comfortable. And that's something that Joe Mann's going to do. That's why right now, we'll get into it a little bit later, but I'll give you a guess, and you can tell me, where the Cubs rate in this whole list here. But when it comes down to it, man, Joe Madden, not only was a great tactical manager, but he was a communicator. It was just a great fit. And him alone, like people can, say what they will about managers. And there are some new advanced statistics where they kind of address, the basically a war, a wins above replacement for a manager. And those numbers aren't really, perfected to this point. But when it comes down to it, I mean, Joe Mann's going to give you a bunch of wins. I mean, not only by what he's able to do strategically, and I think he's always been meant, the way he plays with lineups. I mean, Hell, last year he had 8.675309, right? As a lineup. And like, how awesome is that? Where he's that comfortable playing along with it. The theme trips, so these guys are comfortable. So he's going to do his strategic things, which is going to be a major advantage and give you wins on top of that. But with everybody else feeling like a part of something, like having that great environment, these guys are just going to be more comfortable. They're going to play better, and coming in with the first time manager, I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to do that in Tampa. And like you said, when it comes down to the moves they made, I mean, really, they added John Jaso, Rene Rivera. Rene Rivera is a pretty good catcher coming from San Diego. John Jaso picked up from Oakland, 30-year-old guy. So, they might be able to contribute in some degree. But, like I said, they dumped Escobar. They got rid of Will Myers. It's just even Sean Rodriguez. Sean Rodriguez is one of those guys for them. Even though he didn't play like a huge role, he was one of those guys where he was able to play a ton of positions, and he really worked out for them. And so that's why, kind of thinking about it, Sean Rodriguez going to Pittsburgh is a great fit for him. And so we'll see. I just think, like I said, Tampa Bay, that's kind of a high shot. I'm not sure if the Blue Jays, I think they finally might be ready to take that next step after being hyped for so long. They kind of went through, made a couple moves, moved Brett Lowry, brought in Josh Donaldson. I feel like that might be kind of an even move. At least they'll have Donaldson on the field. And we all know, Bob, we've been talking for 3 years. How do I feel about Brett Lowry?
You've never liked him, especially after the getting into it with that umpire. He's a bad teammate. I feel like, looking at this division, I feel, the Red Sox, if healthy, 86 is realistic, but you're counting on a lot of guys that are, counting on two guys that are, one that's an injury problem and the other one that's a weight problem, especially when you're giving them a lot of money.
Right.
I feel like they overshot with the Yankees as well. 80 wins, that seems a tad high. I feel like they're the 75, 73 win range. Blue Jays, I feel, got lowballed, and Baltimore, I feel, got lowballed as well. Even though they lost Nelson Cruz, I like, Showalter always will have them in the hunt, and I feel like 78's a little low for them. They're going to be over 500.
Yeah, when it comes to the Yankees, I got to say, even though they didn't add a ton of like big money this year right now, basically they were projected to start before the offseason even began to come into 2015 with about $168 million on the books, but almost 169, which, it's not the tops anymore. You got to think they came down last year was 197. The year before that was 228, 209. And in 2011, they had $307 million dedicated to their ball club. But the thing now, they cut that in half. They're at 168. So, I mean, and some of the things that they actually did this offseason where I maybe kind of feel where Precota's coming from on this. They hung on to Chase Headley. That was a offseason midseason acquisition last year to kind of make that push towards the postseason. I love Chase Headley. He kind of had a down year after his big breakout season with San Diego. But I got a lot of faith in him. Another guy where I kind of have a lot of confidence in and feel like he hasn't really gotten that shot has been Garrett Jones. The dude's got a big bat. So, I mean, we'll kind of see how that works out. And they picked up Didi Gregorius from Arizona, because Arizona was one of those teams that did a lot of reshaping along with San Diego, who I've mentioned like several times already. But yeah, no, we'll see what happens. Obviously health's going to be a big part of it, but I'm mostly concerned with just, how their starting rotation is going to be. I'm not so much concerned about their offense as much as I am that they're starting pitching. Plus they lost David Robertson too. God, those White Sox did everything this offseason, huh?
Yeah, the White Sox really have done a lot of moves, and maybe their next move might be if Robin Ventura doesn't get off to a hot start, he could be looking for another job.
Yeah, and kind of on that note, right now the White Sox, they come up in the PECOTA rankings in the Central with 78 wins. Okay, so right now that's good enough according to PECOTA for third. First place, we have the Detroit Tigers at 82, and the Cleveland Indians at 81. The White Sox at 78, the Royals at 72, and the Twins at 70 wins. The Sox, even though they only it's 78 wins, I might feel like that's an unfair number. But when you look at the numbers, 82, 81, 78 in terms of Tigers, Indians, White Sox, they're right in the thick of it. You know what I mean? And I think one of the things having spoken with Rakan was talking about how he's got that list on the wall, of his office of all the off-season moves that he wanted to make. And that was something where he goes, you look at all your different options, and I'm kind of, glancing at it, and he's got everything checked off, every single one of his needs, and this kind of brings me right now. John Heyman, the CBS Sports, put out an awesome article earlier today regarding kind of the winners and the losers of the offseason. When he talks about the winners, he put the White Sox number one. And here, I'm just going to read it off real quick, is rarely has a team so successfully and systematically answered so many of its major questions. They need a righty starter, check. Righty closer, check. Need a number 2 hitter, a cleanup hitter, a lefty setup man, check, check, and check. With Jeff Samardzija, David Robertson, Melky Cabrera, Adam LaRoche, and Zach Duke, they scored a grand slam plus. They should compete in the improvingly difficult AL Central, thanks to a reasonable outlay of slightly less than what the Cubs spent on John Lester. The only tiny quibble is the $15 million in 3 years that they spent on Zach Duke. Seems a lot. And I'm going to agree with them. But I mean, there's guys out there right now that are getting, the 3 years, $15 million. They're getting that money. And so, finding a guy where, they're able to kind of work through that, I'm pretty impressed. I think the White Sox can compete.
I think they can too. I think the Tigers, obviously by the numbers, are taking a step back to 82, but, losing Scherzer, you don't know with Verlander what you're going to get this year. He looks like,
it's getting scary.
He's heading towards a downward turn of his career, not in the dating market with Kate Upton, but, he's kind of diminished a little bit. You look at David Price. He's going to be definitely the best starter in this division.
There's even talks about them moving him too.
Yeah, I think the Tigers, they're going to take. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Tigers. What they got going right now. They maybe, who knows? Maybe they wind up with Shields or something. And I feel like.
Yeah, and its price is dropping. Who knows? Right now is what Shields going to do? Is he going to sign for less money? Why is he holding out so long? I guess technically spring training hasn't started yet, so I guess there's no major rush on it. But it's coming up, man. It's less than a month away, and so that's something where he's going to have to start thinking about, and they're going to have to get a deal done here. And the one thing with Detroit now. They got Mike Ilitch running the show in terms of the owner, the Little Caesars, pizza mogul. Okay, tons of money, really old, horrible to pay, and is willing to spend whatever the hell it takes to put a good ball club on the team. And right now, they show that they re-signed, Victor Martinez, but they did move a couple guys. Right now, I'm not really too sure. If they made enough additions. I was always kind of not very impressed with their bench. Their middle relief and closing staff has been horrible. They went and they took another waiver here on Joe Hanrahan, brought him in. They brought in actually Thad Weber. That's a guy that I actually think, he might be fixable. He worked in Toronto for a short while as a middle reliever, and that was actually during their dominant years as relievers. They had a down year last year in the middle relief, but when it really comes down to it, I'm not sure how Joe Nathan's going to work out. Albuquerque, he's a plus, but, Bruce Rondon, he's recovering right now from Tommy John. And Blaine Hardy, he looked good for a minute. But when you look at the rest of that, that middle rotation, none of those guys are really that impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
think about how often it's failed them. Every time it comes to the playoffs, they bond them out every time.
Yeah. Yeah, they always seem to have that they don't have a bullpen, which is always kind of